We've all been watching from far away on our mobile phones as the conflict has unfolded in Gaza for over 2 years. Today, we speak to someone who's been there and who's witnessed with his own eyes the carnage, the pain, and the desperation. Pradeep Samanjeeva is a nurse from Sri Lanka who works with Doctors Without Borders and has served two tours in Gaza over the last 1 year. He's a frontline health worker who's currently now serving, we understand, in the Middle East. He joins me right now out of Lebanon. To tell us what his experience has been. And this is coming at a time when the UN is starting a conversation, as they should have a while ago, about whether or not what is happening in Gaza is actually a genocide and how the world needs to intervene to make the pain stop. Pradeep, thank you so much for speaking with us and for sharing your story. Tell me, first of all, when did you serve in Gaza and what was the nature of that stint?
I was in Gaza for two assignments, starting from the last December until the June this year. So it was in total around 3 months, in two assignments. And yeah, what I have seen in Gaza is more than the numbers. I would say more than the mortalities, more than the morbidities. I have witnessed the apocalyptic destruction in Gaza. And I have seen this prolonged blockade, since months and months that prevents the medical aids and humanitarian aids, going into the populations, this blockade is stopping all the food commodities, medical supplies, medical consumables, surgical consumables, and the NFI, and like lots of humanitarian aids are not reaching to the population. It's a systematic blockade, and I have seen, how airstrikes have wiped out families, the neighborhoods, and this destruction is very systematic. You can see in Gaza, once you enter Gaza, you go through the rubbles, and nothing is spared from houses, from hospitals, from community centers, desalination points, schools, universities, mosques, and everything is destroyed and bombed or either airstriked. So it is a huge destruction. And I have seen these people, suffering and suffocating in their day-to-day life while they are displaced 100 times and 1,000 times. And we are talking about 2 million people who are stuck in a small piece of land, with thousands of humanitarian needs such as food, access to medical care, NFI, livelihood, like a zillions of medical needs are around them. They have zillions of medical needs. And 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 I have seen, in our hospital in Gaza, we have triage out so many people as dead, including kids, following the huge mass casualty incidents. So there is a massacre happening, there is a humanitarian crisis happening, in the daylight in Gaza at the moment. And the
Pradeep,
children
I
are not
understand.
there.
I understand you've served with Doctors Without Borders in Germany, in Kenya, in Sudan, in Myanmar, in Netherlands, in Serbia, Nigeria. Correct me if I've missed out any other countries that you've been at. You've been in other conflict zones. Have you ever seen anything like what you witnessed in Gaza?
No, as a humanitarian worker, I have been to many conflicts in the world. As you said, I was in Syria, I was in Iraq, I was in Yemen, I was in Kenya serving Somali populations as well. But this is the first time, I have seen such a destruction, such a dehumanization on people, and I see there is no dignity for the human life in Gaza. This is very different from all other emergencies I have seen. And this prolonged blockade I have never seen in my career as a humanitarian aid worker. And this blockade is blocking all the humanitarian aids reaching to population. So this is the first time for me to experience, such a devastated humanitarian crisis. Even when you look at the situation of the children, I have never seen such an impact on children in other emergencies. And
Tell me, Pradeep, when you, as a humanitarian worker with an organization like MSF, how do you enter Gaza? Because it doesn't have an airport right now, it's fully blockaded. So where are you landing, in what airport, how are you entering Gaza, what are they allowing you to carry into Gaza? Is the Israeli forces looking into your bags, into your luggage? Are you allowed to bring in some medicines or something, some necessary items yourself? What happens? Tell us what that process is like.
So when you cross the borders, no, we are not allowed to bring in any medication, no, any items. There is a thorough checkup, at the checkpoints, that you can carry like a minimum things, for your usage, your clothes and your day-to-day things, maybe toiletries that you want to use, while during your assignment. Those are very minimum things that you can carry to Gaza.
And again, is this something that you've experienced anywhere else where you're not allowed to bring in medication? You're not allowed to bring in, we understand from some other reports that baby formula was confiscated at the borders as well.
Yeah, like all the medical aids, provided by all other humanitarian partners are blocked at the borders. The formula from baby formula to medicine, consumables, surgical items, mobility devices, and everything is included in this humanitarian aids, which are stuck at the borders. So nothing is going inside the Gaza at the moment.
So as a humanitarian worker working on the ground, how does that then cripple the work that you are doing? When someone comes with you, when you have trauma cases coming in because of airstrikes, children with with need of amputation, children who are in desperate need, buildings that have collapsed, how are you able to function without the necessary medical instruments that you need, without the medication, without the mobility devices?
It's a constant daily struggle for the medical humanitarian workers. So while we speak, we have more than 80% of medicine and medical consumables are ruptured at the moment. And we are running out of surgical consumables. We are running out of orthopedic instruments, that we need for fixing bones and fractures. And it's very difficult for the medical humanitarian workers to find the resource inside the Gaza. We cannot provide the optimum care without all these supplies that are blocked, at the borders. So it's a constant struggle. Sometimes, you have a child who got amputated, who might need the crutches, but we cannot provide the crutches for this kid. And even when the child is discharged from the hospital, there is no way that child is going to find the crutches in the community. And especially when it comes to surgical instruments and surgical consumables, all hospitals are experiencing the same struggle.
Did you ever feel like your life was in danger, Pradeep?
Yes, we do take calculated risks before we go to any emergencies, and we have our organizational contingencies and mitigations. But I don't think our mitigations and contingencies will protect us when compared to the massive exposure we have in Gaza in terms of safety and security. So, yes, I felt my life was endangered at some points because there is no safety in Gaza, and the safety in Gaza is an illusion. I don't think there's a safety for anyone's life in Gaza just because you are an international aid worker, even. And we have seen some testimonies, some stories where international aid workers were targeted and injured previously, and one of the UN member was killed in the daylight in Gaza. So
Um,
there
my
was no.
understanding is my understanding is a total of 412 international humanitarian workers have died in Gaza in the last 2 years.
Yes, yes. Not only international aid workers, but local health workers. Over 700 health workers were killed in Gaza. They are deliberate attacks, health staff and health facilities in Gaza.
While you were there any hospitals, schools, aid centers that were targeted by airstrikes?
Yes, I have witnessed this. When I was there, we have very few major hospitals left in Gaza at the moment. Two in the south, one in the middle, two in the middle, and very few in the north. So all these major hospitals were targeted during this time. Either they are now partially functioning or they are struggling to function, at their best capacity. So that is the struggle, the major secondary healthcare systems are going through at this moment. And in my experience, I have been to north of Gaza where we had this huge, the largest healthcare setup, which was a Shifa hospital, and you stand in front of this Shifa hospital, and it is apocalyptic. You can still see the burned furnitures, the saline stands, and everything. The hospital is abandoned and the hospital is collapsed. And it's one of the biggest hospital they had in Gaza, in the north of Gaza. And as a medical person, it's very hard and painful to see, such a destruction on a hospital. And this is a day-to-day thing. Either they are attacked or they are always under evacuation. I have some experiences even in our hospital. Our field hospital was under evacuation for hours and hours, for 48 hours, for 24 hours. So it means, there will be no in and out of the hospital. So we will not be refer out the patients, we will not refer in the patients. So either they are attacked or either they are under evacuation, and those evacuation orders are very constant, very frequent in Gaza. And you have to get ready for this evacuation orders within 20 to 30 minutes. So you have to plan your HR, you have to plan your staff, you have to plan your movement within this time to be ready, to be functional at the same time, to be under evacuation. So it's a constant struggle on healthcare systems in Gaza. And we have been seeing this. We have been seeing this for 2 years now.
Pradeep, what is the most common injury or condition that you've had to treat while you were in your field hospital in Gaza?
There are injuries. There are injuries related to violence. That's how we define those injuries. So we see the gunshots, we see the injuries from airstrikes and bombings, and we see the injuries from burns, followed by the airstrikes. And at a given time, we will have more than 20 kids in our ward who got burns, who got fractures, who lost their arms, who lost their legs, who lost their flesh and muscles and bones, right? And we had so many children, who got above knee amputations and below knee amputations, and we got a lot of people who lost their eyesight, right? So those are the injuries we see. And apart from these physical injuries, you see a massive population having this psychological trauma. So you can see the trauma responses, in your patients, whoever comes in your service. So I have been holding hands of small children, who had trauma responses. Either they have nightmares, either they scream the whole day in the ward, or they are hypervigilant, or they play out death. If you give them some crayons, they will draw some death, some funerals, some bombs, some war. So they start play out the death. That is the trauma response we are talking about in children. And when it comes to children, physically, they are more vulnerable. Their tender and soft bodies would not tolerate the shock and the force and the heat of these bombs and airstrikes. That's why they are more vulnerable when it comes to bombing and airstrikes. And children, I want to say more about the children, because I would never ever forget the images and the stories around children in Gaza, because they are the most vulnerable group in Gaza, where there had been more than 15 children killed in Gaza by now. And they are the ones, who are collecting food for their family. They are the ones who are collecting water for their family. And if you go to Gaza, you will be surrounded by lots of kids who are having a metal pot in their hand. So they are collecting food everywhere, right? They are the ones who are lined up at the water trucks to collect water, and they are the ones who are lined up at food distribution sites to collect food for the family. That's why we are getting so many kids who got shot at food distribution sites. They were death traps.
You believe that the Israeli military was targeting children who were waiting to get food?
Otherwise, how do they get killed? Yeah, because there are so many testimonies out there where we had so many kids who got shot. And children, when it comes to children, they cannot protect themselves. They cannot shield themselves. They cannot even hide behind a wall or something to defend themselves. And the children are abundant at food distribution sites. So in our triage, we have seen kids death on arrivals, died due like that we identified during triage. They were included in our death tolls in Gaza.
Pradeep, the
Yeah.
children that do survive, after you've treated them, after the team has performed the amputations, when you release them from the trauma field hospital, because you cannot hold them permanently. You need to make room for other trauma patients. Do these children have enough of a support system? They are now amputees. They are living in a conflict zone. Is there any support system for these children at all?
No, at the moment there is no social support system out there once they are discharged from the hospital, right? And even the unofficial social support systems from the relatives, from the families are distorted because everyone is on the survival mode. If a child who got an amputation and we still need to discharge this child and the rest of his life, and we always question ourselves, what's going to happen to this child? Because there is no support system out there that this child could be taken care of. So yeah, there's a huge void, huge huge blank, in front of us. What's going to happen to all these children? And Gaza sadly has the biggest amputee cohort in the world. What's going to happen to all these children amputee cohort? What's going to happen to this cohort? Who will be taking care of these children? Who needs special support in terms of mobility, in terms of rehabilitation and all? That is a sad situation that children are facing in Gaza.
Pradeep, what is the biggest misconception you've encountered, you think the world has right now when it comes to humanitarian work in Gaza?
And yeah, this confusion and this misunderstanding. We say, oh, even I get some questions from my friends, maybe, from people like, oh, uh, they are resilient in Gaza. The people are resilient. Do they have to be resilient in Gaza? And resilient is not by choice. They have not given enough choices, right? So they are not resilient. They are tolerating what's happening at the moment. And I don't think any of the children in the world should be resilient to a genocide, to a massacre, to a slaughtering. They should be able to live like other kids in the world. Do men and women in Gaza should be resilient? No, they should be able to live like other populations in the world who have access, maybe, right? So I don't think, I think the word we are using, resilient, is to justify our weakness as a human civilization because we couldn't do anything about it for 2 years. So we say, okay, they could be resilient. And we have been watching this genocide in front of our eyes, and we are going to say later on, okay, they survived, or we are going to call them survivors. I think this is the very, very big misconception and misunderstanding that hurts me a lot as a humanitarian aid worker.
Do you believe, Pradeep, that the world is doing enough to stop the carnage? You called it, if I quote you, you said it's a genocide, it's a massacre. Is the global community doing enough?
I see, yeah, I can see some late responses. Even though they are late, I see some positive responses, globally. People are gathering, people are taking lead on their voices, and we are disseminating more information now. I think what I want to say, people out there, like they are the people in Gaza is waiting for you to do something, right? They are really waiting for you to do something because they lost their voice. They have no voice, so they want you to be the voice for them. They want you to stop this genocide. They want you to stop this massacre. They want you to lift this siege. They want you to they want you to do something, to alleviate their suffering. Maybe we
What,
are maybe like the small steps. So the voices I consider as a light. I consider as a positive step. But what we have to, I think, what we have to do to channel all sort of voices, to a one place.
do you believe that that is what the world should be doing at this point, raising their voices?
I think so. As human, representing the human civilization, we all have a responsibility at this point. So in your own capacity, find what you can do in your capacity. Maybe it's the political responsibility you have to take on you, right? As a citizen in any of the countries, that small step would really lead to a big step. I really believe in that. I'm very optimistic in that individual strength of people when it
Pradeep,
comes to change.
the UN is having conversations right now as we speak, but at the same time, how much time do you think the people in Gaza can afford? The children in Gaza, who you are saying are currently being massacred, how much time do they have to wait for the world to act?
No, they don't have time. The next minute is the time for them. The time we speak now is the moment for us to stop this genocide, stop this massacre, lift this blockade. This is the time. We don't have any more time, and we took enough time. We are almost late, and we waited 15,000 children to be killed in Gaza, right? So, do we still have time? I don't think we still have time. And they have been going through this sufferings and suffocation, for 2 years, and we have been watching this. And even as a humanitarian aid worker, I have to tell you, like we felt hopelessness in Gaza. I felt powerlessness in Gaza. So I'm carrying this vicarious pain as a humanitarian worker. I'm carrying this vicarious sufferings of other people. So we have been seeing this for years and years, and I don't think they should be going through this any longer. And
What is
most
the
of the time,
psychological toll?
sorry,
Yeah, what is the psychological toll that these two, rounds of service have taken on you and your colleagues?
in my personal experience, my challenge was to see the sufferings on day-to-day basis, and you carry the vicarious pain and suffering of other people, and at the same time, you have to be the helping hand, because you are the helping hand as a humanitarian aid worker in Gaza. So there's a lot of expectations on you as a human, as a helping hand. That was my struggle, and I don't think I have being able to empathize enough. The people in Gaza, my colleagues in Gaza, our patients in our hospital, that was not enough. The empathy I had, I think, was not enough because it was more than that.
Mm.
I don't think, I console people enough because I had limitations. I mean, it's more than that. I think that was the emotional toll that we all carry as humanitarian aid workers who have been to Gaza. Because we still follow on Gaza, we still see the news and images and videos of Gaza, and you still have connections, contacts with your colleagues in Gaza. Right? How to console them, and should I tell them hang in there? Or yeah, it's very hard. It's an emotional challenge, to console and reassure people in Gaza when you have nothing to offer. And the other day, I was talking to one of my colleagues in Gaza, like a local colleague in Gaza. And before I talk to any media or before I talk to anyone, I ask them, what do you want me to say? Because I rely on what they want me to say. They were not asking for medication, they were not asking for food. They were asking for, we need our dignity back. Believe me or not, he told me that we need our dignity back. So they're asking for their dignity, they're asking for to breathe. So they will have some time to lament and cry for the loved ones they lost. Right? Maybe the children can have a peaceful sleep at night. I think that is what people in Gaza is asking at the moment. The dignity, the human dignity that they deserve.
Pradeep, what was an average day like for a humanitarian worker, as a humanitarian worker in Gaza?
Come again,
What did your
sorry.
day look like? What did a day for you look like when you were serving in Gaza?
Uh, as a humanitarian worker, you have to have a huge flexibility, and you have to be vigilant all the time about your surrounding in terms of security and safety. You have to comply with the organizational security measures all the time because anyone can die in Gaza. So you have to follow your organizational security measures. It takes a lot of our attention, our energy off. At the same time, you don't have any options when it comes to your day-to-day life in terms of food, in terms of accommodation, in terms of recreation, in terms of movement. No, you don't have any options. So you don't live a life completely different from your local staff or your local people there in Gaza. You comply, or you are very proximal, or you are living a life very similar to their life.
Was
And
there
then
enough
sorry,
was there enough food and water for the aid workers?
aid workers has to go through the same line of supplies. Either we have to buy from the markets, or either we have to get from the distributions as well. And at the same time, not just because we are international aid workers or international agencies, we cannot dry out the markets.
Hmm.
We have to make sure there is some food left for the people in the market. So it's like a balance you always find.
And what kind of food is available right now for the people of Gaza?
Mainly canned food, I would say. Any canned food or any some flour if there is any left in Gaza at the moment, and those are the mostly available. And when it comes to preparing food in Gaza, I have to say this: how people are preparing their food in Gaza, they have to look for any burnable they can find to cook their food. It could be a plastic, and you will see lots of kids are collecting plastic papers, broken furnitures to cook their food. That's the reality in Gaza. There is no gasoline or there is no fuel in Gaza. Even our staff, they have to find burnables to cook their food in Gaza. So it's a constant struggle from looking for food, cooking food, and at the same time have this meal in a safe place. That is the dehumanization we are talking about.
And water, Pradeep?
And water, international agencies are providing water through water trucking most of the time. And most of the desalination points in Gaza are destroyed. So people are lined up to collect some water, and when it comes to water, you can't forget about the hygiene in the displacement. They don't have enough water. There is no water quantity. There is no water quality to maintain at least minimum standards of hygiene in populations. So this is the dehumanization,
How are
cutting off
the
people from basic needs.
What is the state of the women of Gaza, Pradeep?
Either women have lost their kids. Some women, I have met so many women, who lost their husband and they were left with one child, or they lost their husband and all the children. It's a very common thing in Gaza to find a woman who has no ties. Yeah, and when you look at the sexual and reproductive health needs around women, we have not been able to reach the minimum standards even in Gaza. When it comes to needs around sexual and reproductive health, there's a huge void, there's a huge gap in this service delivery in Gaza. We don't know how they are maintaining their menstrual hygiene. We don't know how they access the antenatal care. And we don't know how they access the postnatal care. As humanitarian workers and as medical humanitarian aid, we see a bit of the needs. All other needs are hidden. When it comes to public health perspectives, we don't have access to public. So we don't see the public health needs apart from all this surgical and emergency care that we are providing in Gaza.
We speak very little about the senior citizens, unfortunately, the elderly who need care under normal circumstances. Is anyone looking out for the seniors of Gaza?
Culturally, they always accompany their seniors and elderly people, with them wherever they move or whenever they displace from one place to another. But I have heard so many people, senior citizens saying, no, we are tired of moving out now. They are really tired of being displaced from one place to another 100 times, 1,000 times, and I have seen it in my staff also, and some of my colleagues sometimes come to me. My mother doesn't want to move. There is an evacuation order, but my mother doesn't want to move. My father doesn't want to move. What should I do? And they're risking their life. And the staff is in stress because there's going to be an airstrike in that area which is under evacuation at that time. Because they have seen it all as elders and seniors, and in their whole life they have been displaced 1,000 times, 100 times maybe. So they are tired of being displaced. So they choose to stay because for them it's like nothing to lose at this moment.
So, have a lot of the people in Gaza now just given up?
From my experience, what people would say, have said, we want to live for our kids, our children. Maybe our lifetime, our life is gone, or our life is, we don't have much time maybe, but we have to stay or we have to live for our children. That is what I heard from my colleagues, from other people in Gaza. When I have talks, with the patients and bystanders in the hospital.
Pradeep, there is obviously, we've talked about the lives of the people who live there, But Gaza used to be a fully functioning civilian area with schools and colleges and universities and movie theaters and cafes and life.
Yeah.
Is there any sort of social structure left? Because we're watching everyday visuals of now buildings just being flattened across the strip. What is
Yes,
left really now?
I have not been to this era of Gaza, but I had colleagues who had been to Gaza in that era, where there was life in Gaza. But I have been to south of Gaza, middle of Gaza, north of Gaza. So it's all apocalyptic. You will see only the destruction, especially when you go to the north of Gaza. Gaza city, especially, it had been a prosperous, beautiful city with everything people wanted, for their recreation and for their life. But now there is nothing in the Gaza city. You will see only the destroyed buildings in north of Gaza, in the Gaza city. It's, it's really apocalyptic. When I went to north of Gaza for the first time, when when I got out of the car, I was shocked in the middle of these destroyed buildings because it's unimaginable. It's beyond the human capacity to imagine, that it has happened, that destruction has happened. Because I have never seen such a destruction in my whole life, even not in this humanitarian career. So, so no, there there is nothing that people can hold on to in Gaza now. Nothing has been spared. Schools, hospitals, mosques, universities, water points, everything has have been destroyed in Gaza. So
Pradeep, in
when
your
you enter the
personal
Gaza, you feel like you're going through these rubbles. It's like a ghost city. Like once you enter to some places, because now people have left those collapsed, destroyed buildings. They are trying to get into this so-called humanitarian zone, which is 40 square kilometers that they have to fit into.
Pradeep, in your personal experience while you were at the field hospital, did you ever encounter a child who had been shot at with a sniper, which did not seem like an accident?
Yes, yes, we had seen some children who got shot on their abdomen, and we had to refer out this patient for the further care. This children for further care, and even the airstrikes. I don't think they are accidents. They are deliberate airstrikes on people, on children. So yeah, we had so many. There are so many stories around children when it comes to Gaza, in my head, in my memories. I would never ever forget as a humanitarian worker. Like I have seen a kid, who got more than 50% of body surface area burned, who died in our care, and he fell into a big pot of soup while he was waiting for food. And he was in the middle of the crowd, and he fell in the soup at a community kitchen. Yeah, we will not believe. Yes, people with the world will not believe it's happening. And it is not just a mortality of a child who got burned. It's the way it happened, right? So that child shouldn't be at first place, in that line for the food. The way it happened matters a lot. And we had a one child in our ICU who lost all his family, left with the aunt, 4-year-old boy who lost one of his leg, a bony amputation. 4-year-old boy who lost his parents in that airstrike. And I would never be able to forget that face of that child. It will always be in my memory. Yeah.
Pradeep, there are no words.
Yeah,
I
these are the real stories, Faye. Like they're real stories, and sometimes it's very hard to. Yeah, it's very hard. Even when we speak about Gaza, people would not believe it that it's happening, but it's happening. Because I have witnessed it, right? I will be a person who have witnessed this
yeah.
in Gaza. Yeah, it's happening in daylight. Maybe all the journalists in Gaza have been killed now. That's why this information are not coming to us, right? Real time information and these testimonies and these stories are not coming to us, to the world. Maybe only few NGO from international agencies would witness this on the ground. Those are the real stories, testimonies. That's why I'm saying Gaza is not just modalities or the morbidities. It's more than that. It is that systematic, strategic way of making people to suffer. Yeah, that's what's happening in Gaza.
What you're saying to me effectively is that you believe that this is a mass physical, emotional, and mental torture of an entire population.
Yes, it is. I don't think it will take hundreds of thousand years to bring the relief they need in Gaza. Physical relief, mental relief. Yeah, there'll be immense needs around mental health in Gaza. It pained me a lot when I always see the mental health needs in Gaza. So I always thought about it like how we are going to heal these children, how we are going to heal the whole entire population in Gaza. How many years could it take to give them the mental support they need? We are talking about a huge population who went through this genocide and who went through this mental trauma, the psychological trauma. They lost their loved ones, they lost their properties, they lost their houses, they lost their dignity as humans. Yeah. And they, on top of that, they are hopeless and they are powerless and they are voiceless. And top of that, they feel like no one cares. And I really mean it when I say this. Like, I heard it from my colleagues in Gaza that they believe no one cares. And that is their main worry, that we all are watching.
That the world is watching and not doing anything, that
Yeah,
nobody
they're
really
just
cares
watching,
to
not
stop
doing
it.
anything, and they feel like no one cares. That is the most painful part of it. Like the most painful thing I hear from my colleagues from Gaza, and I carry that shame as well as a human. I carry that shame as a human because it is a shame on the human civilization at this moment, and as a human, a part of human civilization, I also carry that shame.
Pradeep, I hope that your voice reaches more people. I hope it encourages more people to raise their own voices, and that we have some change, some relief, that the world is motivated to stop the carnage and to save the children of Gaza. I want to thank you for speaking with me today. Do you have something to
Thank
say? Please go
you.
ahead.
I want to say one last thing. Doctors would not be able to stop this genocide. The world leaders can stop this genocide. So let's rephrase this question to the world leaders out there. Tell us the way you are going to stop this genocide.
Yeah.
Because as doctors, as medical personnel, we will not be able to stop this. It is them
Thank you,
who should
Pradeep.
tell us how they are going to stop this.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Pradeep, for
Thank you.
speaking with me.
Thank you.
And thank
Thank
you.
you for your time.
And thank you for the work that you have done. Thank you.